Welcome to the sleepy hours, a quiet space where dreams begin and worries fade.
Tonight, drift with me into the misty hills of Willow Glen, where rain unlocks forgotten dreams, and a barefoot dancer waits beneath the stormlight. Rain fell like secrets from the sky, soft and endless, washing the sleepy meadows of Willow Glen in a hush that made time forget itself. There was a hush to this place, a kind of sacred silence that only came when the clouds rolled low and the world turned silver. On such nights, they say, something stirs, a whisper in the grass, a figure in the storm. No one knows her name, no one has ever touched her hand or heard her voice, but they have seen her, fleeting and graceful, spinning. Barefoot through the fields, beneath the silver rain, she wears no cloak, no crown, only the shimmer of falling water and the rhythm of the earth. And wherever her feet touch, something impossible blooms. Flowers never planted, colors never named, petals opening in the wake of her dance. Some say she is the spirit of the valley. Others believe she is a dream shared by those who still remember wonder. Children press their faces to the glass when thunder rolls, hoping for a glimpse. Elders speak of her with softened eyes and voices low, as if saying too much might make her vanish. One woman has seen more than most. Elara, with her quiet hands and restless heart, has stood beneath the rain for years, letting it soak into her bones, waiting. She lives at the edge of the glen, where wildflowers meet forest and silence deepens. Her life is gentle, filled with herbs and books and unspoken longing, but always she has felt the pull of the rain, not just as weather, but as invitation. Something ancient in her stirs when the clouds gather, as if a forgotten thread is tightening, leading her somewhere just beyond the veil of the ordinary. There is something about Willow Glen when it rains, the way the wind sings through the reeds, the way puddles reflect more than just the sky. It feels like the world holds its breath, and if you are very still, if your heart is open and your footsteps quiet, you might step into something not entirely of this world. You might follow the scent of wet earth and distant music. You might find her. This is not a tale of danger or dragons. It is not a tale of quests or kingdoms. It is a tale of softness, of slow magic, of the kind of beauty that grows in silence and disappears when you try too hard to hold it. It is a story wrapped in rain and wildflowers, in echoes and dreams. It is the story of the one who danced and the one who watched until the two were no longer separate. Tonight we begin. Breathe in slowly. Let the breath come like the rain, gentle, effortless, natural, and now breathe out as if the air itself is softening inside your chest. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw loosen. Let the muscles behind your eyes relax. Feel the hush of the evening settling in, as though the whole world is being wrapped in mist. Outside the window, a fine rain has begun to fall. Not heavy, not hurried, just a silver veil across the sky, almost invisible until you lean in to listen. You can hear it now, a soft, steady rhythm, like fingertips drumming on leaves, like water dancing on rooftops, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. It comes without demand, without drama. It simply is, and it brings with it a promise that all things will slow, that nothing needs to be done. Now bring your awareness down to your feet. Feel them resting, supported by the ground beneath you. Imagine that beneath that floor is soil, cool, rich, alive, and deeper still, roots and rock, carrying the memory of rain from centuries past. Your feet are safe here. You are safe here. Let your attention drift upward through your ankles, your legs, your hips. With every breath, tension loosens and slips away. Let the backs of your thighs sink a little deeper. Let your spine soften, as though each vertebra is a leaf unfolding in the rain. There is no need to hold anything right now. Let your stomach rise and fall with your breath. You don't need to pull it in. You don't need to shape it. Just let it be. Let it move like water. Now your chest, a hollow grove, a soft place. Imagine your heart as a quiet drum inside you, steady and strong. With each beat, you send ripples of ease through your shoulders, down your arms, to your fingertips. They rest now, light as feathers. Your neck is free of weight, your jaw loose, your tongue resting, your face calm, your breath slow. There is nothing left to do. There is nowhere you must be. You are here, and that is enough. Imagine a window just slightly open, the scent of rain drifting through. It smells of pine and moss, of distant blossoms, of the sky itself. Outside, the garden glistens. Petals, cup droplets like tiny mirrors. Leaves bend and release, bend and release. The world is breathing with you now, slow, full, effortless. Inside the cottage, all is still. The candles flicker gently. A cup of tea steams quietly on a table made smooth by time. The walls are lined with old books and bundles of herbs. There is warmth here, not just of fire, but of presence, a feeling that this space has held dreams, laughter, stories whispered in the dark. It is a place of rest. Elara sits in the center of this quiet world, cross-legged on a woven mat. Her eyes are half-lidded, her hands resting open in her lap. She breathes slowly, not to change anything, but to be with what is. Her window is wide, and the rain is her companion. It falls with the same pace as her breath, in, out, in, out. She does not try to think. She does not try to feel. She simply allows. Somewhere in the distance, a wind chime stirs, not metal, but wood, soft. Hollow notes that rise like questions and fall like sighs. Time is folding in on itself. There is only this breath, this moment, this hush. The longer you stay here, the more the rain becomes a language you remember. It speaks of stillness, of soft change, of things growing in silence. Elara opens her eyes. She gazes through the misted glass, watching the meadow beyond her cottage blur and shimmer. A single wildflower has bloomed overnight near the edge of the forest, delicate, pink, impossible. She smiles, not because she understands, but because she doesn't need to. Some things are only meant to be witnessed, not explained. Your breathing is calm now, your body heavy and warm. The rain has done its work, not to awaken, but to soothe. Not to shake the earth, but to soften it. You are held here gently. There is a path ahead, but for now, you are not walking it. You are watching the world as it is, letting it wash over you like waves of light and water. You are safe. You are still. You are ready to drift into the story. The morning in Willow Glen doesn't arrive with an alarm or a rush of noise. It unfolds, like the petals of a sleeping bloom stirred gently by the sun. The day rises in layers of softness, pale light touches the tips of the meadows first, then slips across moss-covered stones, then slides through curtains left slightly open to let the dawn breathe. Birds do not call, they murmur. Leaves do not sway, they stretch. And somewhere near the edge of it all, in a cottage with ivy clinging to its chimney, Elara wakes without effort, as if the light itself had whispered her name. She does not begin her day with haste. There is no urgency in her world. She moves, like the rain she loves, unhurried, flowing. Her feet touch the cool wooden floor, and she wraps a shawl around her shoulders, woven in threads the color of storm clouds. She lights a single beeswax candle and carries it with her into the kitchen, where sprigs of lavender and mint hang drying above the hearth. A kettle waits patiently on the stove, and soon the room fills with the scent of chamomile and something faintly citrus, something that makes the air taste like comfort. Outside, the world is still damp from the night's rain. Drops cling to every surface, 2 spider webs strung like harp strings between fence posts, to the edges of oak leaves, to the silken tips of tall meadow grasses. Elara steps out into it, her boots sinking slightly into the soft earth. She breathes in deeply, her eyes half closed, letting the coolness settle into her chest. The glen hums with life, but not the kind that shouts. It hums with the low, steady vibration of things rooted, things returning, things remembering. Her cottage sits at the border of the glen and the woods, a liminal place, neither here nor there, both open and hidden. The village itself, the people of Willow Glen, are kind but quiet. They nod to Elara when they see her, offer small waves or freshly baked bread wrapped in cloth. She smiles in return, always soft, always a little distant, not because she doesn't care, but because she's always listening for something else, something farther away, something only she seems to hear. Her days are gentle and rhythmic. Mornings in the garden, her hands sunk deep into the earth. Afternoons gathering herbs, each plant chosen not just for its use, but for its song. Because Elara believes that everything living hums with its own kind of music. She listens with her fingertips. She listens with her breath. In the evenings, she writes. Not novels, not letters, but thoughts, fragments of memory, flashes of images from her dreams, names that come to her from nowhere and fade just as quickly. She keeps them in journals, stacked high in the corner of her room, pages filled with rain. Though she lives alone, Elara is not lonely. There is something within her, something vast and old, that fills the spaces others might fear. She has known loss, the kind that arrives like a storm and leaves silence in its wake. But she has folded that silence into her life like another blanket, something warm enough to carry through the years. Her parents are gone now, long buried beneath the roots of the very trees they once taught her to climb. But their presence lingers in the way she moves, in the herbs she brews, in the quiet kindness of her gaze. But even in this life of gentle routine, something stirs, a curiosity, a tug at the edge of her awareness, as if a thread had been woven into the tapestry of her days without her noticing. It comes with the rain, always with the rain. It began when she was a child, no older than 7, standing barefoot on the back porch as a summer storm rolled in. While other children ran for shelter, Elara stepped forward into the downpour, and there, in the meadow, she saw her, a figure spinning slowly, arms lifted, hair wet and wild. dress clinging to her like the sky itself. She was too far to see clearly, but Elara never forgot the shape of her, the motion, the impossible beauty of it. The next morning, the field was blooming. Flowers that had never grown there before, lilies, moonflowers, bluebells opening in the warmth left behind. No one believed her, of course. They said she had imagined it, that the flowers had always been there, just waiting for the rain. But Elara knew better, and from that day forward, she watched the skies with different eyes. Whenever the clouds gathered, she felt her heartbeat change. Whenever the first drop fell, she would press her hands to the window, waiting. Years passed, and the vision faded into memory, but the feeling remained. The sense that something ancient and beautiful moved just beyond the veil of what others could see. She never spoke of it again, but she kept watching. She kept listening. And every time the rain returned, something inside her stirred like a song she couldn't quite recall. Now, as an adult, that feeling has grown more urgent, not loud, not insistent, but present, constant, like a low drum beat under everything. She feels it most when she walks along the old trail that winds through the meadow and up toward the forest. There's a bend in the path where the air always seems cooler, where the light changes, where birds fall silent for just a breath. Lingers there sometimes, unsure why. She always wondered what lay beyond. It was a Tuesday, though days in Willow Glen often slipped into one another like silk threads, indistinguishable, timeless. The clouds had returned early that morning, cloaking the sun in soft grays and turning the valley into a painting of fog and dew. The air had a particular scent to it, rich with petrichor and the earthy memory of roots. Elara stood by her garden gate, a woven basket hanging loosely from one wrist, her other hand brushing the tops of sage and rosemary as she listened. It wasn't the sound of the rain that caught her attention. Not this time. The rain was familiar, comforting, an old friend with a voice she had memorized. No, it was something else, a silence, not empty, but expectant, as though something hidden beneath the surface of the world had paused to breathe. She turned toward the meadow without thinking. Her feet began to move on their own, her basket forgotten, swinging like a forgotten word. The path was soft beneath her boots, the soil still saturated from yesterday's storm. As she walked, a breeze drifted past, carrying a faint aroma of blossoms she couldn't name, not the sharpness of roses or the sweetness of honeysuckle, something wilder, more ancient, like the scent of something blooming for the first time in centuries. As she reached the bend in the trail, where the trees leaned slightly inward as if to whisper, Elara stopped. Her breath caught, not from fear, but recognition. There, in the soaked meadow grass ahead of her, were footprints, fresh, too fresh. They weren't hers. They weren't boot prints, or the prints of a deer or fox. These were bare, human, small and delicate, pressed deeply into the soil. Each one had something impossible at its center, a tiny, blooming flower, as if the weight of the step had coaxed the blossom into being. Some petals were still trembling with water, not from the rain, but from life. Each footfall bloomed a different species: buttercup, violet, bellflower, fern-fringed, and glowing faintly in the muted morning light. Elara's heartbeat slowed, not quickened, slowed, as if her body knew it needed to match the rhythm of something much older than her. She stepped closer, crouched down beside one of the prints. Her fingers hovered over a small cluster of pale blue blossoms, the petals still slick with dew. She did not touch them. Somehow it felt wrong to do so, like interrupting a conversation in a sacred tongue. She rose slowly, following the trail. The prince meandered through the open field, weaving between patches of tall grass and tiny streams swollen by the rain. There was a rhythm to them, not rushed, not linear, almost as if the walker had been dancing. At times, the steps turned in wide loops, sometimes pausing entirely before starting again. She followed her own footsteps, careful, deliberate, though. Nothing bloomed beneath her soles. It wasn't fear she felt, nor even wonder. It was remembrance, a feeling just beyond her reach, like the half-remembered chorus of a lullaby sung in childhood. She had seen these steps before, somewhere between dream and waking. She had waited for them. The trail led her to the center of the glen, where the tall trees opened into a wide clearing ringed by stones, smoothed by age. Moss covered them in soft green velvet. At the far edge, just before the trees thickened again, the footprints vanished, simply stopped. There was no last step, no sign of retreat, just a final bloom, a white lily, large and perfect, cupped upward like a whisper, and then nothing. Elara stood in the stillness, unsure of how much time had passed. The clouds overhead shifted slowly, spilling filtered light across the clearing. The rain had quieted to a mist. All sound was hushed, even the birds. The world held its breath, and so did she. She knew better than to call out. The dancer, if she was here, or had been, was not a creature summoned by voice. She was something else, something felt, a presence that responded not to sight or sound, but to stillness. Elara waited a moment longer, then another, but the silence held. Eventually, she turned, retracing her steps back through the meadow. The footprints had already begun to fade behind her, as if the ground was reclaiming them, tucking away the secret. But in her chest, the echo remained, a steady pull that reached deep into her bones. Back at the cottage, she didn't speak of what she'd seen. She didn't write it down. She didn't even make tea. She simply sat by the window, watching the rain return, eyes wide and unblinking. Her hands were still, resting in her lap, palms up, as if waiting for something to be placed in them. That night, sleep didn't come easily, not because her thoughts were racing, but because something inside her had awakened that refused to close again. She lay in bed, her window cracked open, the rain drifting in with the breeze, like a lullaby missing its last note. Somewhere far off, she thought she heard a footstep in water, just one, then stillness, and as her eyes drifted shut, a picture formed behind them, a woman with arms outstretched beneath the storm, not standing, dancing. Elara smiled, even as sleep finally took her. Whatever it was, it had begun. The next morning came in with soft light and an amber sky, the clouds beginning to scatter after a long night of steady rain. Willow Glen shimmered, every blade of grass dressed in silver. The world felt cleansed, washed not just of dirt, but of something unseen, a kind of hush in the soul, the way one feels after tears have passed or a long song has ended. Elara rose early, though her body begged for more sleep. Something in her bones pulled her to the window, as if part of her had continued walking through the storm even while her body had slept. She stepped outside without breakfast, without thought. The ground beneath her was wet, but forgiving, soft. Enough that her steps left brief prints in the mud before being swallowed again by the earth. She walked with no destination, guided not by sight but by instinct. The basket she usually carried was left behind. Her hands remained empty, her breath slow. She didn't ask herself why. She already knew. The trail had changed, subtly, almost imperceptibly, but changed nonetheless. Trees that once stood apart seemed closer together, forming a kind of gentle corridor. Wildflowers had sprung in places they'd never grown before, strange, delicate blooms with translucent petals that held the last drops of the storm. The air was thick with fragrance, a blend of honeysuckle and something older, something deeper, like rain on stone. She followed the bend in the trail again, where she had found the footprints the day before. This time, there were no signs on the ground, no flowers blooming beneath invisible feet, but the energy was still there, the quiet pull, the shift in air pressure. As she stepped into the clearing once more, it no longer felt like a place she had visited. It felt like a place that had been waiting for her, and she was not alone. Across the clearing, partially veiled by a slow falling mist, a figure moved. Elara did not gasp, did not flinch. Her breath caught, but it wasn't surprise. It was recognition, the kind that stirs when a dream returns. Clearer than before, the woman danced, barefoot, on wet grass. She spun slowly, her arms moving like river branches, swaying in current. Her hair was long and dark and soaked with rain, clinging to her back like silk. Her dress was a flowing layer of gray and blue, trailing behind her like a piece of cloud made solid. She didn't look toward Elara, but somehow Elara felt seen. The dancer's feet made no sound. Her steps were weightless, yet flowers unfurled in her wake. Their petals opened the moment her foot touched soil and closed gently once she passed. She moved in wide circles, smaller spirals, then paused, tilting her face up toward the sky as if listening to music that the world could not hear. Elara remained still. She didn't dare speak or approach, not out of fear, but reverence. She knew now this was not a creature meant to be caught, not something to chase or explain. She was witnessing a sacred moment, a ritual not meant for the waking world, but somehow gifted to her nonetheless. Then, without warning, the dancer slowed. She turned toward Elara, and though her eyes remained shadowed beneath the veil of her damp hair, a warmth bloomed between them. It wasn't sight, it was presence, a kind of acknowledgement, not of meeting, but of remembering. The woman raised one hand slowly, palm outward, and let it hover in the air for just a second. Then she turned, and with one final spin, vanished into the mist. No sound, no fading. Footsteps, just gone, like the final note of a song that lingers in silence. Elara remained there, not moving. Her heart was not racing. It was slow, deep, echoing with the rhythm of something larger than her own life. She didn't try to follow. Instead, she stepped forward into the space where the dancer had just been. The ground was still wet, the grass bent, marked by recent movement. At her feet, a ring of flowers had opened, delicate, shimmering with dew, unlike anything she had seen. She knelt, this time unable to resist. She reached out and touched one. It pulsed beneath her finger, not visibly, not like a heartbeat, but in energy, like a gentle wave moving into her skin. She inhaled sharply, not from pain, but from sudden clarity. A scent filled her lungs. Not floral, not earthy. It smelled like memory, like her mother's voice in the next room, like the warmth of her father's hand on her shoulder, like every moment she'd ever felt truly still, truly seen. Tears welled in her eyes, though she wasn't sad. It was too big for sadness. It was the kind of emotion that comes only in the presence of something beautiful and inexplicable. She remained there for a long while, her knees wet from the grass, her breath rising like fog. When she finally returned to her cottage, she didn't try to speak, not even to herself. She brewed tea in silence, not bothering with sugar or honey. She held the cup in her hands and stared out the window as the rain began again, light and steady. She didn't try to write anything in her journal. She knew that words would fail. This was not something that needed to be recorded. It needed to be felt. And when night came and the sky darkened again, Elara stood barefoot at her doorway, letting the rain kiss her face, her arms hanging loose at her sides. She didn't move, she didn't call, but deep inside her, something had shifted. Not everything mysterious needs to be solved. Some mysteries simply ask to be witnessed. Some dances need only one audience. And in the stillness of that rainy night, Elara finally knew she would return again and again, until the rhythm became part of her, until she no longer watched but joined. The glen had opened something inside her, a door she didn't know she'd kept shut. The first step had been taken. The next day arrived with the gentlest light, not sunlight exactly, but a muted glow, as if the clouds themselves had taken mercy on the earth and opened just enough to allow a hush of brightness to settle. Elara awoke with the image of the dancer still spinning slowly behind her eyelids, even in waking. Her mind echoed with the rhythm of bare feet against wet grass and the delicate sound of rain singing on skin. She moved slower than usual through her morning. Her hands prepared tea, but her thoughts drifted. Every motion, every breath felt suspended, like she was still half living in that clearing. She did not speak aloud. She did not write in her journal. She simply existed, and that was enough. Around midday, the rain returned, soft and steady. She stepped out again, drawn like a thread tugged gently through a tapestry, her body responding without resistance. Her boots slipped through puddles, her shawl gathered water and weight, yet she did not feel wet. The rain did not cling to her as it once had. It seemed to fall around her now, beside her, like a companion walking in silence. When she reached the clearing, she paused again at the outer edge, not out of hesitation, but reverence. She wasn't expecting to see the dancer, not today. She had learned now that such beauty came in its own time, like the blooming of a rare flower. It could not be chased or summoned. It had to be welcomed. But something was there, not movement, not sound. Something resting at the center of the clearing, nestled within a cluster of dew-brushed grass, right where the dancer had last stood. Elara stepped forward slowly. Her breath grew shallow, not from fear, but wonder. There, lying atop the soft, green blades, was a garland, woven not by accident or wind, but by hand. It was made of rain-touched blossoms, moonflowers, bell-shaped wild lilies, blue gentians, and thread-thin ferns. Their colors shifted slightly in the mist, as if unsure whether to be real or imagined. She knelt beside it, staring down. Her heart swelled. There was no message, no explanation, and yet the meaning was clear. You saw me. That was what it said, without words. And I see you. Tears welled in her eyes, and this time she let them fall. The rain welcomed them. No one was watching. There was nothing to hold back. This was not a gift for praise or performance. It was an offering of connection, a gesture that said, "You are part of this now." Her hands trembled as she lifted the garland. It was light, impossibly light, and yet holding it felt like holding something ancient and sacred. She pressed it gently to her chest, the petals cool against her skin. For a long time she remained there, kneeling in the rain, wrapped in silence and something that felt very close to home. And suddenly memory returned, not in fragments, but in full bloom. She was 8 years old again. The cottage still smelled of lavender and warm bread. Her mother stood at the open doorway, arms outstretched as a storm rolled in. She had called to Elara, laughing, her voice like wind through reeds. "Come on," she had said, "the rain is ours today." They had danced barefoot through the puddles, hands clasped, skirts swirling. Her father had watched from the porch, a mug in his hand, smiling with eyes that said everything. She had forgotten that moment. Somehow, over the years, it had faded beneath the weight of days and quiet routines. But now, holding the garland, she felt it again, the joy, the freedom, the sense that rain could be more than water. It could be belonging. Her mother had been the first dancer in her life that night. Elara returned to the cottage with the garland cradled in her arms like a newborn. She placed it on the center of her small wooden table, beside the candle and her favorite teacup. The flowers did not wilt. If anything, they seemed to glow a little brighter as the night deepened. She brewed a tea from memory, rosemary and lemon balm, with a pinch of dried apple skin, and sat beside the window, staring out into the misted dark. Her breath was steady, her hands calm. Something had changed inside her, not broken, not shaken, opened. The silence no longer felt like absence. It felt full, brimming with presence. She touched the garland once more before bed, not to check if it was still real, but to thank it. And as she slipped beneath her blankets, the rain continuing its song against the roof, she whispered something aloud, though no one else could hear. "Thank you for remembering me." In the soft dark, she didn't hear an answer, but she felt one. That night, she dreamed of a circle of women dancing barefoot under a silver sky. Their hands joined, their faces blurred but radiant. And somewhere in the circle, her mother danced too, and somehow she knew they had always been dancing. She had just forgotten the steps, but now the music had returned, and yet, as peaceful as her heart had become, as full as she felt, something still stirred. Not longing, not ache, but unfinishedness, as though a door had opened. Yes, but behind it, more waited. There were still more footsteps to follow, more petals to bloom, and somewhere, in dreams, in rain, in memory, the dancer had not yet finished her song. The next day arrived with the gentlest light, not sunlight exactly, but a muted glow, as if the clouds themselves had taken mercy on the earth and opened just enough to allow a hush of brightness to settle. Elara awoke with the image of the dancer still spinning slowly behind her eyelids, even in waking. Her mind echoed with the rhythm of bare feet against wet grass and the delicate sound of rain singing on skin. She moved slower than usual through her morning. Her hands prepared tea, but her thoughts drifted. Every motion, every breath felt suspended, like she was still half living in that clearing. She did not speak aloud. She did not write in her journal. She simply existed, and that was enough. Around midday, the rain returned, soft and steady. She stepped out again, drawn like a thread tugged gently through a tapestry, her body responding without resistance. Her boots slipped through puddles, her shawl gathered water and weight, yet she did not feel wet. The rain did not cling to her as it once had. It seemed to fall around her now, beside her, like a companion walking in silence. When she reached the clearing, she paused again at the outer edge, not out of hesitation, but reverence. She wasn't expecting to see the dancer, not today. She had learned now that such beauty came in its own time, like the blooming of a rare flower. It could not be chased or summoned. It had to be welcomed. But something was there, not movement, not sound. Something resting at the center of the clearing, nestled within a cluster of dew-brushed grass, right where the dancer had last stood. Elara stepped forward slowly. Her breath grew shallow, not from fear, but wonder. There, lying atop the soft, green blades, was a garland, woven not by accident or wind, but by hand. It was made of rain-touched blossoms, moonflowers, bell-shaped wild lilies, blue gentians, and thread-thin ferns. Their colors shifted slightly in the mist, as if unsure whether to be real or imagined. She knelt beside it, staring down. Her heart swelled. There was no message, no explanation, and yet the meaning was clear. You saw me. That was what it said, without words. And I see you. Tears welled in her eyes, and this time she let them fall. The rain welcomed them. No one was watching. There was nothing to hold back. This was not a gift for praise or performance. It was an offering of connection, a gesture that said, "You are part of this now." Her hands trembled as she lifted the garland. It was light, impossibly light, and yet holding it felt like holding something ancient and sacred. She pressed it gently to her chest, the petals cool against her skin. For a long time she remained there, kneeling in the rain, wrapped in silence and something that felt very close to home. And suddenly memory returned, not in fragments, but in full bloom. She was 8 years old again. The cottage still smelled of lavender and warm bread. Her mother stood at the open doorway, arms outstretched as a storm rolled in. She had called to Elara, laughing, her voice like wind through reeds. "Come on," she had said. "The rain is ours today." They had danced barefoot through the puddles, hands clasped, skirts swirling. Her father had watched from the porch, a mug in his hand, smiling with eyes that said everything. She had forgotten that moment. Somehow, over the years, it had faded beneath the weight of days and quiet routines. But now, holding the garland, she felt it again, the joy, the freedom, the sense that rain could be more than water. It could be belonging. Her mother had been the first dancer in her life that night. Elara returned to the cottage with the garland cradled in her arms like a newborn. She placed it on the center of her small wooden table, beside the candle and her favorite teacup. The flowers did not wilt. If anything, they seemed to glow a little brighter as the night deepened. She brewed a tea from memory, rosemary and lemon balm, with a pinch of dried apple skin, and sat beside the window, staring out into the misted dark. Her breath was steady, her hands calm. Something had changed inside her, not broken, not shaken, opened. The silence no longer felt like absence. It felt full, brimming with presence. She touched the garland once more before bed, not to check if it was still, real, but to thank it. And as she slipped beneath her blankets, the rain continuing its song against the roof, she whispered something aloud, though no one else could hear. "Thank you for remembering me." In the soft dark, she didn't hear an answer, but she felt one. That night, she dreamed of a circle of women dancing barefoot under a silver sky. Their hands joined, their faces blurred but radiant. And somewhere in the circle, her mother danced too, and somehow she knew they had always been dancing. She had just forgotten the steps, but now the music had returned, and yet, as peaceful as her heart had become, as full as she felt, something still stirred. Not longing, not ache, but unfinishedness, as though a door had opened. Yes, but behind it, more waited. There were still more footsteps to follow, more petals to bloom, and somewhere, in dreams, in rain, in memory, the dancer had not yet finished her song. The sun never truly burned in Willow Glen, but that morning it showed itself through softened clouds, casting long amber rays across the glistening fields. A silver sheen lingered on every surface, from moss-covered stones to the tips of pine branches, as if the forest itself had been polished in her absence. The storm had passed, but its music still echoed inside her, each step she took whispering with the weight of what she now carried. Elara walked home slowly, her shawl heavy on her shoulders, her hands tingling with memory. She didn't look back, though she felt the grove behind her breathing gently, still holding the shape of her passage. There was no rush, no reason to speak. The silence walked beside her like an old friend. She no longer felt the need to explain what had happened. She knew now that the dancer had never been meant to be explained. The world felt both unchanged and completely new. Inside the cottage, everything sat exactly where she'd left it. The cup on the table, the garland resting like a secret on its wooden plate, the journals stacked by the window. But she saw them differently now, not as objects of routine, but as fragments of a story she had never fully understood she was part of. She traced the rim of the teacup with one finger, felt the ridges in the pottery, and smiled. Every object around her was infused with the quiet pulse of belonging. The rain hadn't washed things away, it had revealed them. She sat at the window. For a long while, no tea, no fire, just her breath, slow and steady. Her gaze drifted to the hills, where mist still rolled lazily across the trees. It was not the thick veil of mystery it had once been. It was light now, familiar, as if it too had been changed. A soft warmth bloomed in her chest, not a spark of joy or excitement, but something older, recognition. The woman who had danced with her in that misty dream had not been a stranger, not truly. She was part memory, part story, part reflection. And yet more than all of those, she had been the echo of something Elara had carried within her all along. The movement of her mother's hand, the rhythm of bare feet in childhood puddles, the laughter caught in the folds of her grief. The dancer had never been separate from her. She had been waiting, Elara thought, back to the memory she'd seen in the glowing pool beneath, the tall, storm-colored tree that last day by her mother's bedside. All these years, she had carried a silence from that moment. Not regret, exactly, but stillness that had frozen her voice. Now she could see it clearly. The word her mother had mouthed was not a goodbye. It was a beginning, a whisper to move, to return. Dance, it had been a legacy, not a loss. She rose and stepped to the table where the garland rested. The petals, though days old now, had not browned or curled. They glowed faintly in the morning light, their colors shifting ever so slightly, blues deepening, whites brightening, purples blooming anew. She didn't know how or why, and she didn't need to. Some beauty was meant to be trusted, not named. She lifted the garland gently, placed it around her neck. It settled against her like it belonged there, not like decoration, but like memory worn on the body. Then she walked to the center of the room and stood for a moment in stillness. It wasn't intentional. There was no plan, but her body moved. Slowly, she raised one arm, her fingers loose like rain against glass. She let her breath guide her, let the music within her chest rise like a tide, and her body followed. Her feet shifted across the wooden floor. Her shawl whispered as it turned. She closed her eyes, and the room faded. There was no need for witness. The dance was not a performance. It was a remembering. She spun slowly, arms lifted, letting her heart lead the rhythm. She thought of her mother's hands, her father's laugh, the scent of warm earth after storm, the feeling of cold water on skin. Each motion was a memory spoken without words, each turn a translation of the unspoken. When she stopped, her breath was calm, her hands returned to her sides. The world stilled again, but inside her, something remained in motion. Later, that afternoon, Elara took one of her journals and opened to a blank page. She stared at it for a long while, unsure if the words would come. But they did, not in full sentences, not in structured thought, but in fragments, a rhythm of its own. Rain remembers, movement heals. She never left. She waited in me. I am the glen's echo, and I have begun. She closed the book, pressing her hand to the cover. The next time it rained, and it would rain again, she knew she would return, not with longing, not to watch, but to continue, because the dancer was no longer a mystery outside of her. She was part of her breath, her grief, her joy. The steps were already written into her bones. And now Elara understood. She had not been chosen. She had not been found. She had been remembered. And then, just as she thought it was over, something flickered at the edge of her vision. A figure, not in the glen, not in the dream, but in the reflection of the window. A girl, barefoot, laughing. She turned. No one was there, but the laughter remained, carried by wind, echoing from a place she hadn't yet reached. There was more to the story. The rain was not done. The days that followed carried a strange stillness, like the breath held between notes of a song. The rain came and went, sometimes in soft veils, other times in brief downpours, but always with the feeling that something was gathering. The world of Willow Glen continued, as it always had. Birds nested, trees whispered, the stream at the edge of the meadow trickled its silver secrets. But Elara could feel it now, pulsing quietly beneath the surface of everything. The world was not merely alive, it was listening. She moved through her days with calm purpose, harvesting herbs, drying petals, scribbling thoughts into margins. Yet her thoughts drifted again and again to the final glance in the window. That barefoot girl, that laughter curling through air like a forgotten melody. It had felt different from the visions before. Not past, not memory, not even dream. It had felt like a beginning that night. As twilight poured itself over the glen like ink through water, Elara stood barefoot on the grass. The sky was heavy, with clouds that glowed faintly from within, lit by the quiet promise of a storm. A wind moved across the hills, not cold, not warm, simply present, as if guiding something toward her. She tilted her face to the sky, breathing in the metallic sweetness of coming rain. Then, without a single crack of thunder, it began. But this time, the rain didn't fall downward, it rose. Mist lifted from the ground in slow ribbons, defying gravity, curling upward like smoke from unseen incense. Drops hovered mid-air like pearls, suspended by invisible threads. The world tilted, not in dizziness, but in wonder. Elara stepped forward, her feet brushing the earth as if it too had become weightless. Dot all around her, puddles shimmered, not with reflections, but with windows. Each one no longer showed her face, but other places, other times. One showed a forest of glowing blue trees swaying to music without sound. Another held a staircase spiraling into clouds lit from beneath by a deep crimson sun. One pool showed an endless field of dandelions, their seeds floating upward in slow reverse, returning to their stems like wishes being remembered. She knelt beside one. This one showed a room, warm and candlelit, a child sleeping under a quilt stitched with stars, a lullaby humming from a voice that sounded like her own, but older. She reached toward the surface, but didn't touch it, flickered and shifted, not away, but forward. The sleeping child stirred, rolled over, and as the vision cleared, Elara saw the garland of wildflowers resting on the child's small chest. She inhaled. She was the mother in that vision, or maybe the child, maybe both. She rose slowly. The glen was fading, not disappearing, but transforming. Trees no longer stood still. They drifted upward like boats sailing on wind. The ground was softening beneath her, becoming not water, not air, but memory. And in the center of it all, something floated toward her, a single silver thread. It hovered before her, glinting with pale light, vibrating ever so faintly, not with sound, but sensation. She reached out and touched it, and the world unraveled, not into chaos, but into light. Everything became luminous. She stood not in the meadow now, but in a sky of drifting stars and impossible colors, not dark, not bright, simply endless. Shapes moved around her, flowing like silk in water, birds made of glass, deer with branches for antlers, great orbs of music that pulsed like heartbeats. None of it frightened her, none of it even surprised her. She had been here before, or perhaps she had always been here and had only now awakened to it in the distance. Or maybe beside her, a voice began to hum. It was not a song of words. It was a song of being like wind through hair, like rain on skin, like the first breath after grief. And from within the music, a shape began to emerge, the dancer. But she was not alone this time. She was joined by others, dozens, maybe hundreds, moving in slow, spiraling patterns across the sky. Some shimmered like water, others glowed like fireflies, their hands outstretched, not to take, but to offer. They danced in silence, yet every motion sang. They weaved in and out of one another, never colliding, always flowing, a living constellation. And then they parted, and in the center stood Elara, not watching, not waiting, moving. She did not know how her feet found the rhythm. She did not know how her arms lifted in perfect time. But her body knew, her bones knew, her breath was part of the music now. She twirled slowly, letting herself dissolve into motion, letting the rain, if it could still be called rain, trace her skin like notes written in water around her. The sky shifted again. Petals fell upward. Shadows danced with light. Time rippled and folded, and through it all, she understood something she had never been taught. The dancer was not one person. She was all of them. Every girl who had run barefoot into the rain. Every woman who had wept beneath limelight. Every soul who had found beauty in sorrow. Who had moved through grief with grace. They were all part of the rhythm. The dance was not to be seen. It was to be joined. The dancer had not been waiting for Elara. She had been Elara all along, and now she had remembered her way home. The sky brightened with soft gold. The music slowed. The other dancers began to drift away, vanishing like smoke into dawn. Only the original figure remained, standing just across from her. She smiled, not with lips, but with light. And then she reached out her hand. Elara reached back, and as their fingers touched, they shimmered once, then faded, not into silence, but into stillness. Elara opened her eyes to dawn. The world was still, soaked in a golden hush. A thin mist lay draped over the meadow like a sleeping shawl. The air was cool and thick with the scent of wet earth, pine needles, and something floral, soft, elusive, like the echo of a dream just out of reach. She sat up slowly, realizing she had lain down in the tall grass without meaning to. Her hands were folded gently over her chest. Around her fingers twined slender stems of wildflowers, their petals trembling with dew. She looked at them, not with surprise, but with quiet recognition. Her body ached in the way it does after a long swim, not with pain, but with the memory of movement. Her limbs were loose, her breath slow, her heart beating in time with the rhythm of the rain now settled into soil. She was grounded, present, but changed. The glen felt familiar, but not. The same dot she stood, brushing leaves from her shawl, and looked toward the forest edge. There were no dancers there, no drifting lights or backward rain. The sky was brightening with the first warmth of the sun, and birds had begun to stir in the hedges. Yet something lingered, not around her, but within her. The music, it hadn't vanished with the dream. It had stayed. She took a slow step forward, her bare foot sinking slightly into the soft moss. The sensation was intimate, her body meeting the world, not with caution, but trust. As she walked the winding path back toward her cottage, she passed the places that had once held mystery. The archway of flowers, now just branches and sky. The mirrored puddles, now still with quiet water. The whispering grove, now humming with the simple sound of leaves in morning wind. But she no longer needed signs. She no longer searched for the dancer's figure in the mist or listened for footsteps in the grass. The search had ended. The story had turned inward. She reached her garden gate just as the sun broke above the hills. Light poured over the wildflowers, their colors shifting in the warmth, purples deepening, oranges glowing. Bees moved slowly from bloom to bloom, their wings catching sparkles of gold. Her hands brushed through the blossoms as she passed, and though no new flowers sprang up beneath her feet, she smiled. The blooming had already happened. Inside, her cottage welcomed her like an old song. The warmth of stone, the scent of herbs, the low creak of wooden floors. She placed the garland, still miraculously intact, on the windowsill where the light could touch it. Then she moved through the space, slowly, lovingly, as if walking through a memory that had never stopped breathing. Later, she brewed tea, but this time she added a sprig of something new, a pale purple flower she couldn't name, one that had not grown in her garden before. She crushed it between her fingers, inhaling its bittersweet perfume, and dropped it into the warm water. The scent filled the room. Her breath slowed again. She sipped, and she knew. The dance had always been more than movement. It was memory, passed like light through generations. It was the healing that unfolded when grief was given breath. It was the choice to keep living with open hands. The dancer had not been waiting to be seen. She had been waiting to be remembered. And Elara, in her quiet life at the edge of the glen, had finally done just that. She went to the shelf where she kept her journals and selected a new one, the cover plain, the pages crisp and untouched. She opened to the first page and wrote nothing for a while, her pen poised in the silence. Then, with a steady hand, she began, "I no longer need to chase her, because I now move like her. I no longer wait for the rain, because it lives within me. The dream did not take me away. It brought me home." She closed the book and rested her hand over the cover. Outside, the sky shifted again. The rain had stopped, but the clouds remained soft and drifting. The world was breathing gently. Somewhere across the meadow, a fox darted between tall grass, pausing briefly to meet her gaze before disappearing into the woods. And something in that simple moment, a wild creature moving freely, the hush of the wind, the last glisten of droplets on a branch, made her realize that the dancer might never appear again, or she might appear, always in the flicker of candlelight, in the smile of a passing child, in the rhythm of steps across a room. Elara had gone, far further than she had ever imagined, into memory, into dream, into the part of herself that had waited quietly behind every silence. And now, as she stood once more at her open window, the mist lifting from the glen and drifting into morning, she felt no need to seek. She simply stood, breathing, listening. Everything she had longed for was already inside her. Night returns like a soft tide, brushing its cool fingers across the hills of Willow Glen. The sun has long since folded itself behind the distant ridgeline, and now the world is wrapped in mist and moonlight. Stars blink gently above the fields, scattered like quiet thoughts across a dark velvet sky. A breeze moves slowly through the trees, stirring the leaves with the hush of a lullaby that only the forest knows. Inside the cottage, a candle flickers beside the window, its flame swaying with the rhythm of sleep. Elara lies, curled in her bed, wrapped in a woven blanket the color of twilight. The garland still rests on the sill, its flowers aglow in the silver light, as though they are breathing too, opening and closing with the steady beat of the world. Breathe in slowly and breathe out even slower. You are here now at the edge of the dream. You don't need to walk anymore. You don't need to wonder. There is nothing to chase. You are already inside the rhythm. You are already inside the story. Above the glen, clouds drift like great sleeping animals. Below them, the rain has quieted into a soft shimmer. Every drop left behind is a pearl resting on leaf and petal. The earth is full, satisfied. The night listens. Elara's breath is steady now, her body still, but her mind floats like a feather, gently circling downward. She is not dreaming yet. but she is close. The world behind her eyes begins to glow with soft colors, deep green moss, golden leaves, a path lit with starlight. There is no tension in her limbs, no weight in her thoughts. Outside, a soft rustling, perhaps a deer, or perhaps the wind, passes by her garden. The sound barely registers. Her awareness has become the rain itself, dispersed, delicate. There is nothing to hold. There is only the rhythm of her breath, the rhythm of the earth, the rhythm of memory and silence and peace. She remembers now what it felt like to be weightless, to move without thought, to dance not for others, not for purpose, but for stillness. In her mind, her feet trace soft circles through tall grass. Her arms float like mist. Her hair lifts in the breeze of a dream. Somewhere far away, a bell chimes once, not loud, not sharp, just a soft tone carried across the hills, announcing nothing, promising nothing, only reminding the world that it is night now, and all things may rest. You may rest. There is no more to do, no more to see. You are safe now. You are light. You are still. Imagine the rain drifting down again, not as storm or noise, but as silk, each drop brushing your skin, your thoughts, your breath. It wraps around you like memory, like sleep, like the voice of someone you've loved forever whispering, "It's time to let go now." The stars begin to blur. The trees stretch upward into shadows. The fields exhale a long, low sigh. And you, drifting at the edge of the dream, begin to float downward, not falling, just slowly sinking into the gentlest darkness, the kind that holds, that comforts, that keeps you safe. There is a river beneath your breath now. It moves slowly, deeply, endlessly. It carries you. You don't need to swim. You don't need to guide it. Just drift. Every thought becomes smaller now. Every sound softer. Even time has gone quiet. And as you slip into the last part of this, night one, final image lingers. A figure, barefoot in the rain, spinning slowly. The petals at her feet unfolding like dreams. And you, not watching her, but becoming her, because you always were. The moon is high now, resting like a watchful eye above Willow Glen. Its light pools gently on the sleeping fields, on the roofs of quiet cottages, on the folds of leaves that have turned inward for the night. Everything is still inside the cottage. The candle has gone out. Only the garland remains on the windowsill, its petals motionless, caught in that final moment before dream becomes sleep. Elara lies completely still, her breathing so soft it barely stirs the air. She is not awake, she is not dreaming, she is simply resting, held by the rhythm she has come to know. Outside, the rain has stopped. There is no sound, not even wind, just the hush of the world remembering itself. Somewhere in the glen, a single petal falls. It lands silently on the soft earth, and then nothing. Only stillness, only sleep, only the rhythm of the rain dancer fading into silence.